Hello fellow Emacs user. In this video I'm going to talk about a package that I've developed which is named Dtache or Dtache Emacs. And that's a package to run and interact with shell commands which are run in isolation from Emacs itself. The name of the package comes from Dtache, which is the program that makes this package possible. The inspiration for the package comes from those situations where I would choose to run commands in a terminal outside of Emacs. My reasons for not using Emacs at those points were mainly due to performance reasons. I didn't find MetaX shell to be as fast when it was handling commands that had a lot of output. And also I had some concerns about the stability. I didn't want to run a command that would take 20 minutes and then have to worry about whether Emacs would crash during that time and I would lose my progress. And also in situations where I needed remote support, I would instead create a terminal and SSH into a remote host and start a command over there with the help of Tmux and then detach myself from it so that I can, for example, close down my own computer without that bringing down the shell command. So what Dtache introduces is a concept of sessions. So in one Dtache session, one single shell command will be running, and then comes the question: well, how do I create such a session? And that's a very good question. So there are three ways. Either you choose MetaX and the command Dtache shell command. So I'll simply do that, Dtache shell command. And you can run something. I'll keep it simple. I'm just running ls. So it ran, and in the echo area here we got a notification that the Dtache finished and it was running this command. And the second way is to use a function named Dtache start session, and that is a function that you could use inside your own custom commands that you have, or for inclusion in other packages, for example. So in this case, we'll be running pylint on a file called demo.py, which is located on the code Python. So I'm going to start that, and we see down here we haven't gotten a notification yet, and now we got it. So this time it didn't say Dtache finished, instead it says Dtache failed. So that's something to look into. And thirdly, you can use MetaX shell as like a dispatcher for Dtache sessions. So if we open up the MetaX shell and then perhaps run the suggested command here, this one will just loop for 20 seconds and then it will execute this command. So now you can see it has started. We can detach ourselves from the session, or we can reattach ourselves. So that seems to work. Well, that's all great. Now we know how to start a session, but what should we do with it? Of course, we need to interact somehow with the session. And we can use this one, the Dtache list sessions. That's a command. You can access it with MetaX. I will just run the block here to execute it. And we'll see that those three sessions that we just started, they're all here. We got the ls command, it ran on localhost in this directory. Took 2 seconds to run actually. That seems a bit strange. And also, yeah, it was created at this point in time. Now instead, pilot demo.py, that has an exclamation mark here on status, and that's because it failed. It took a bit longer to run. Yeah, and this one also succeeded, took 20 seconds as we expected. So if we press return, we can see here actually that return triggers a do what I mean function, which is the Dtache open session. And yeah, we got the output from the ls command here. It's only demo.org. For this one, we got all these numbers as well as the final LSLA. And behind the scenes, the Dtache open session actually called the Dtache open output in those cases. But when we have a situation where a session has actually failed, instead of using this command will be used, the Dtache compile session. So enter brings up this information, and now we can see we got some links here and syntactic highlighting. And this is because the compilation minor mode is enabled here. So basically we can mimic the experience that we would have with MetaX compile. So clicking on this link brings us actually to the source, and we can use next error and previous error to navigate between those. So that's a very nice feature of Dtache. Basically, it means that you don't have to choose between the experience you have when you run MetaX compile, when it comes to that functionality at least. Other things we can do with the sessions is that we can rerun a session. So let's rerun this one. I'll press R and refresh. We can see that it's now active, as seen here. If I press enter now, it won't use the open output or compile session. Instead it will tail the output. Yep, so that seemed to work. Now it's inactive. We can choose to perhaps delete it. We don't need a copy. And these two last ones here, we can choose to either copy the command with W, or we can choose to copy actually the whole output. So that's convenient to have sometimes. Yes, and also if we actually rerun it, and now it's running, we can kill it, and then we see that it stopped here at 7 seconds because we terminated the actual output there. So that's some of the features that you can use to interact with the session. What else can you configure then? So one thing is annotators. You can have an annotator function or multiple ones that runs when a session is started. The intention is that those capture metadata information that are informative when it comes to a session. So here's an example where there is a function that don't take any input arguments but returns the name of the branch if a session is executed inside a Git repository. So let's evaluate this function and add it to the list of annotators. and then start a session inside the Dtache repository. We got the feedback here, and now if we list the sessions, we see that this command ran and it got annotated with the branch demo. Also, there are external packages that could be used to enhance the Dtache experience. The first section here is about Embark and Marginalia. So basically, the Dtache open session is an alternative to Dtache list sessions. So yeah, I will call my binding for it. And we can then see the same sessions as we saw previously, but we don't have the informative annotations here. And that's what Marginalia brings to us. So we enable this package, and now we have all this information that we saw in the Dtache list sessions. And we can also enable Embark in order to be able to act upon a session and perhaps remove this one. So let's delete it, and now it's gone. Another personal favorite is the alert package. And as we saw previously, the echo area was used to notify the user when a session has finished. But an alternative is to use the alert package, which instead will use the system notification. So we evaluate this block here, and it creates this function and uses an advice to override the default implementation with this new one. And we'll see how it works here. I'm going to start a session that should be successful. So we got it up here, and it says Dtache finished, and it ran the ls command. Now I'm going to try to run the lsl command, which doesn't exist. So instead we got this red notification here that it failed. And also there are some other use cases. So for example, remote execution. I remember saying that was one of the issues I had with why I was not using Emacs. And Dtache has support for remote execution, which is made possible through Tramp. The only difference from a user's perspective is that there might be some delay before the notification is issued. So I'm going to start this one. It will sleep for 5 seconds and then run the ls command. And we can see here now that it's running, but we'll soon see something weird. It said it will be running 5 seconds, but now we got the notification. And the reason for that is when we are running on localhost, we can take advantage of Emacs built-in functionality that allows us to subscribe to file modifications, basically. And the socket that the underlying Dtache program is using will be deleted upon the session finishes. So that's why we have this very very accurate timing when we're on a local host, but on a remote host instead we need to rely on a polling strategy, so there will be a timer running there, and it's not as accurate then. But since you most likely run on remote host for for commands that takes a little bit longer time, then yeah, that's the use case so far. Also, it's probably worth mentioning, at least I think, that duration is very valuable, at least for deterministic commands. So not only can we always see how long it took for a command to run, but also how long a command has run when there is a session that is active. Which I think is valuable in order to determine how long time you have left until the session should finish. Another feature is that you can diff 2 sessions, and I'm just going to evaluate this block because I had some problem with my configuration. And to diff 2 blocks, 2 sessions, I will do like that. And we are using the built-in ediff functionality to diff them. At the top there we got some session related information like the working directory, the status, when it ran, etc. And then also the actual session output. So it becomes easy to compare 2 different runs, for example, on different branches in a project. Also, another use case that I use a lot is Dtache in combination with Transient, where Transient is one of the core packages of Magit, and I think they play very well together. At work I use the power of Transient to compose the shell commands. It's very flexible and intuitive to provide different options and arguments to shell commands, and then I let Dtache take care of actually running them, with the added benefit of if I need to rerun the exact same thing, I will just utilize the functionality from Dtache to trigger a rerun, because then I already have the command that I should run. And also a nice feature is that you can actually, when you launch, for example, a session through a transient or some kind of function, then you can customize how the function should be opened. And you can actually also customize the callback function. Here is an example of a custom open function. So we'll see it being set here. It's a lambda function which makes sure that we're going to see the output in a buffer named Dtache custom open. It is going to insert this specific header before it actually inserts the output. So we can start such a session, and it's ran. And I mean, now if we would open, for example, this one, yeah, that's as usual, but our most recent one now has, this is a custom view of the session, and it's opened in this specific buffer. So that is something for you to be mindful of, that functionality exists, and maybe that's something that you could use. Personally, I utilize it to customize the way the compilation mode behaves a little bit, so I can instruct it to how to find actual files when I run some certain build commands at work. So now we have come to the end, but there is one last thing we should actually prove, and that's the ability to actually run these commands independently from Emacs, because that's not something we have seen so far. So I'm going to launch a local session here running this loop command, and also a remote session running this 30-second sleep. We see we don't have any sessions active at the moment, so I'm going to launch it, launch it, kill Emacs, open a new Emacs, and then list sessions, and we see that those are running. Now the first one finished. So if we refresh, it's the remote one that is left, and it will probably notify us in a short while. Oh, there it was. That was the wrong. And yeah, that was all I wanted to show. So thanks for watching.